Let's rewind back to 1960 and head to the University of Minnesota's apple breeding program. At that point in time, apple breeders were looking to create the next best modern apple, a large, crunchy, and delicious fruit that was well adapted to the cold. The head at the time of the Horticultural Research Center, Dr. Cecil Stushnoff, crossbred two apples, Keepsake and MN 1627. The seeds from the fruit of this cross were planted out and each designated unique names. One of those seeds then grew into what was then named MN 1711. As years went on trialing MN 1711 and thousands of others, it is now the winter of 1976-77. That year, Minnesota saw the most brutally cold winter on record, and MN 1711 suffered severe winter damage. And a big part of what apple breeders do is not only look for the next great apple, but they're also reducing the amount of noise, or in other words, they get rid of the failures. These failures are the apples that don't make the grade. Maybe they're not hardy enough, large enough, sweet enough, or don't meet the strict commercial characteristics like bruise resistance or resistance to browning when cut. So in the spring of 1977, after seeing MN 1711's frost damage, University of Minnesota breeders ripped it out of the ground, and that tree effectively became worm food, gone forever. But here is where the story takes a turn. Enter young breeder Dr. David Bedford. Hired in 1979 after Stushnoff left the university, Bedford was hungry to discover the next great apple. Immediately assigned the task of going through all the discarded trees, Bedford didn't take this task lightly, knowing that if he wasn't careful, he could be forever eliminating the world's next best apple. So as Bedford was going through the discarded trees, something caught his eye: MN 1711. When going through the report, it stated that the original MN 1711 mother tree suffered serious winter injury and that it wasn't worth growing, which was why they ripped it out of the ground. Now, seeing that they did this, at the way bottom of the report, what piqued Bedford's interest was that there were subsequently 4 clones taken of MN 1711 just prior to its removal. Bedford was confused. He researched MN 1711's ancestry and had found that it shouldn't have been susceptible to winter injury. He surmised that maybe the mother tree wasn't planted in the right spot, that perhaps it hadn't seen the most optimal of planting conditions. Seeing that the 4 MN 1711 clones were slated for removal as well, Bedford rushed to save those 4 clones just before it was too late. What happened next not only changed Bedford's life forever, but also changed the apple growing world as we know it. Just in the nick of time, Bedford heroically saved those 4 clones right as they were about to be ripped out of the ground and gone forever. He convinced the other breeders that MN 1711 was worth growing and that they should give it another shot. The other breeders reluctantly agreed, and so now fast forward a couple years when MN 1711 finally fruited, and they were totally astonished. The flavor was unlike anything they had ever experienced before. Bedford went on to name the fruit Honeycrisp, and then the rest of the story is history, as Honeycrisp then went on to become one of the most widely beloved varieties in the modern world of apple growing.